Taking a startup from an idea to a successful business is no small feat. Some will succeed, some will not. Some will go on to build multi-million-dollar businesses, billion-dollar companies. Others would, stay in thousands. Others would actually fail. But regardless, when you're building a startup, the successful ones will go through 3 different stages of growth: the traction stage, the transition stage, and then the growth stage. Now, at different stages, your priorities are going to be different. Your goals are going to be different. What you measure are going to be different. The channels that you use and how many channels you use are going to be different. Of course, your team dynamic is also going to be different. In this video, I want to talk about building a startup, the 3 stages of growth, the different things that you should know about the different stages, how to know what stage you are currently, and how to also know when it's time to move on to the next stage, which means having different priorities. My name is Itimi, and you're welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm passionate about growing people and growing businesses, and that's what I do with my YouTube channel. I create videos on business, marketing, growth, branding, etc. And also, I create videos about life, inspirational stuff. If this is your first time watching this video, please click the button below to subscribe. Also, turn on the bell notification button so you know every time I release a video. I try to be consistent at least once every week. Let's go down to the video, the 3 stages of growth. As I said already in the introduction, there are 3 stages of building a startup. There's the traction stage, the transition stage, and the growth stage. Now, first of all, let's talk about the goals. Now, the traction stage is simply the stage where you are trying to get a grip. It's simply the stage where it's the initial progress of a startup where you're trying to build momentum. Now, when you're on this stage, basically just rolled out your MVP, right? What you're supposed to be focusing on here is product market fit. Product market fit, which is simply, is my product viable? Is my product be able to fulfill the promise? Is my target audience beginning to actually pay attention to my brand, to my service, to my product? Am I getting a little bit of traction from this? When you're in the traction phase, you're not supposed to focus on anything aside making sure that I'm iterating my product as much as possible so that my target audience are getting maximum value from it. It's simply making sure that there's a viable market for my viable product that fulfills this promise. Whereas when you're in the transition phase, your goal here is identifying different growth levers. So we would say identify Now, growth levers are simply the things in your product or your marketing that is working, that is giving you traction. They're simply those things that are moving the needle, especially because it's very important to hit your North Star metric. So you want to ask yourself, what are my key growth levers in my transition stage? What are those key things about my product or about my marketing that if I am able to optimize it very well, and then we're going to keep having a lot of retention and awesome referral from our current users, right? So once you move beyond, oh, my product is viable, when you get to transition, you're saying, okay, what are those basic things? So for instance, if I'm a transaction focused product, one of my growth levers could be the amount of transactions that are completed on my mobile app every day, or it could be daily active users. Now, those are key growth levers, and you ask yourself, what do I need to do to optimize the number of transactions or the number of daily active users? Or maybe for a B2B business, you're thinking, how do I optimize the number of leads qualified, not just leads generated for my business? Those are key growth levers. So what is it about your product or your marketing that are key measures of growth that actually move the needle for your business? That's what you focus on in transition stage. And then when you get to growth stage, it's simply about, like Brian Buffett you would say, the growth stage is simply about going up and going right. You've already had proven market fit. You've already identified your growth levers. So here, maintain growth. Here, maintain growth, right? Make sure that your product is still viable. Make sure that you are still optimizing your key growth levers, because those are super important, and just maintain it and keep, moving up and moving right. The next indicator for stages of growth is key metrics. I can have this worst writing sometimes. Key metrics. When you're in the traction stage, again, the traction stage is simply where you're trying to get a grip, is initially building momentum. When you are here, you just rolled out your product, you're just still iterating your MVP. The key metric for you is retention. You see, this is a thing that would shock some people, because a lot of startups, once they roll out, the first thing they pay attention to is customer acquisition. Whereas if you are going to be able to move to the transition and growth phase, you need to first of all focus on retaining the early users that you're able to acquire for your product. And so when you are in the traction phase, ask yourself, how can I make sure that my retention rate is super high? How do I improve the stickiness of my product so people are coming back of their own volition? How do I make sure that my weekly active users and monthly active users is super high? That's where you're focusing here. The reason is because if you're able to maintain a certain high retention rate or keep increasing the amount of customers that you retain, at the end of the day, these customers are going to be the ones who will refer other people, other users to your product. That's where you can easily hit a sweet spot with virality. And so, I want to scale up my numbers and do a referral marketing strategy. Because you already have a high percentage of retained users, active users, these people can help you and will genuinely actually want to share your product for you. So focus on retention. The more people use your product, the more you understand your product and market, the more you're able to optimize for viability or product market fit. So here, focus on retention and think about, for your product, what will be the key retention metrics to focus on, and those are the things you want to focus on. And then for transition, key metric that you should focus on is knowing the lifetime value of every customer and the cost per customer acquisition for each customer. I made a video some time ago about the LTV and CAC, so you should definitely check it out. I'll put the link down below or up there somewhere, but I'll put it there so you can actually click on it. Now, LTV is lifetime value of a customer, and CAC is cost per customer acquisition. Now, at the initial stage, it might be very difficult to find out what the lifetime value of each customer is, because you haven't spent a lot of time, or they haven't spent a lot of time in the period. It's probably maybe like a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year. That might not be enough. But the minute you move from traction to transition, you already have gotten product market fit. You want to start asking yourself, what is the lifetime value for each new customer that I acquire? Because a bit of the things you want to start doing in transition phase is that you're not just optimizing growth levels, but you can start actually opening up the amount of customers that you get, right? You can actually start increasing your customer acquisition strategies. And so you want to be saying, okay, what is my unit economics? For each customer, how much will I get from them? For each customer, how much am I spending from them? And how do I make sure that I am increasing my LTV? I'm increasing my LTV ratio, my lifetime value per customer, whereas I'm decreasing my cost per customer acquisition. That is the key metric you're focusing on when you get to the transition stage. And then on the growth stage, key thing that you want to focus on here, it's also the same thing, right? You're going back to retention and your LTV CAC ratio, right? These are the key things. An additional thing that you also focus on here is payback period. Payback period, think about it as the amount of time it would take you to get return on investment for what you're doing for your business. Think about it as the point where we break even as a startup. Once you hit growth phase, you start thinking a lot about profitability. How can we make sure that we're breaking even? How can we make sure that we're making profit and sustaining our profit and our investors are basically happy? So retention and LTV CAC ratio doesn't go away as key metrics for a product-focused or consumer-focused startups. But at some point when you get to growth phase, then you need to start thinking about breaking even and becoming profitable. Now, when we get to the next metric that you want to focus on is volume. volume. Now, volume is simply how much customers, how much users can a startup take, or should a startup take at different stages, right? Do you want to hit 10 million users in your first 3 months? Can you maintain that number of users? You might not be able to. So when you're still trying to focus on attaining product market fit, ensuring that your product is viable, what you want to do is to just focus on getting a consistent stream of users, a consistent focus on getting a consistent stream of users. You don't want to grow so much so fast in terms of users or customers while you're still iterating and trying to find product market fit. Because what happens when you do that is that you could crash. Your server could crash. You might not be able to contain it. You might not have the necessary resources, even in terms of people or infrastructure. And also, you need a small number, not very small. You need just enough to be able to experiment and iterate until you hit the sweet spot with product market fit. So focus on just increasing daily, consistently, enough for you to experiment, enough for you to iterate, enough for you to understand your product, enough for you to understand your market. Focus on optimizing your retention, making sure that every user that comes, you're retaining at least 70 to 80% of them, right? So traction is not a place to, with the amount of users, it's a place to acquire a steady, consistent number of users. However, when you get to transition phase, this is where you actually can start moving a bit towards increasing customer acquisition a bit. So just turn up the volume a little bit. Still a consistent stream of users, but a bit more pressure at this point. Because if you're hitting product market fit anyway, so you might as well start acquiring as much users as you can. But just enough that again your infrastructure and your people can also take, right? So this, turn up the volume. And then when you get to the growth phase, of course, focus on customer acquisition. Focus on customer acquisition. Like, just go. Go all the way. The assumption is that by the time you hit growth phase, you must have hacked customer retention. And so it would just make sense to just keep acquiring as many users as you can. The other assumption also is that by the time you hit growth phase, that your team and infrastructure and even funding must have grown a lot, that you can take as much as you can, right? A very good example would be Zoom. When this coronavirus started, Zoom went from, I think, acquired like 1 million users in less than a week, right? That took them months or even years. I'm not sure of the stat. But imagine going from say maybe just a few thousands to like over 1 million, but they didn't crash, right? Because they had already reached growth phase and they already had the infrastructure and the people. They already hit product market fit. It was working. We know how to use Zoom. We are already paying for Zoom. So it's just like, oh, more people know you, more people need you, and we can still withstand it. That's a typical good example of a company who has gone from product market fit to transition, and when they're in growth, they can take in as much number as possible without crashing, right? So that's the goal, right? We're not saying don't focus. When I'm not saying we're in transition, in traction phase, focus on only 10 users, only 1,000 users, or only 50,000 users. I'm saying no, but different stages will require different focus. So if you are scaling super fast, you can move from traction to transition to growth in the blink of an eye, right? In a year or two. For other companies, it might take a longer time, but understand where you are. Once you hit your goal, you're moving to the next stage. Once you hit your goal, you're moving to the next stage. Another thing you want to focus on, another thing to consider for different stages is channels. Now, when you're in traction phase, you're just beginning, right? The key thing that you want to do here is to experiment with different channels. Experiment with 2, 3, 4 different channels until you find what works. Again, you're trying to find a source that can give you consistent stream. So experimenting will come in really handy. Again, when you're in traction phase, one of the key things that you want to do is to experiment as you can so that you can always hit this, right? It's learning, it's experimenting, it's learning and iterating over and over again that can actually get you here, right? So focus on 2 to 4 channels until you hit the sweet spot. However, when you get to transition phase, what you want to do is you want to streamline your focus a little bit more. You want to focus on the 1 or 2 channels that gives you the best users, right? So when you get to transition, it's not a time to be using all the marketing channels, all the marketing strategies. It's a time to say, what are our focus channels? What channels give us the 70 to 80% of our quality users in terms of volume, also in terms of quality, like are they active, are they completing transactions, are they initiating transactions? And then focus on those channels squarely so that you can easily turn on your volume. Again, remember that what you're trying to do here is that you're trying to reduce your cost per customer acquisition. So if one channel is giving you a least expense but high quality, then why not focus there as against, spread your tentacles just because you want to be everywhere. And then when you get to growth phase is a bit of both. There's time for diversification, again, because you want to turn volume all the way in terms of customer acquisition. Also because you most likely have more funding, more revenue at this time. This is also the time where you want to start thinking about building your brand and making sure your brand position is like super strong and run lots of awareness campaigns. So there's a little bit of diversification in terms of channels when it comes to growth. However, there's been research that says that most companies, at the end of the day, that most of their users, like 80% of their users, will come from one channel. So you still see a focus. So when it comes to like key customer acquisition, there'll be one channel. But for other marketing goals, there's the opportunity to diversify, and that's really okay. And then the last thing is optimization. Now, when you're in the traction phase, you want to look at the big picture, right? What are those big changes that we would make on our product that will move the needle, that will have significant changes, right? What are those big things that would actually get people to say, oh, this thing was very significant to the product experience or to how they interact with our business, with our product or service, right? So yeah, focus here on the big picture. Big picture changes. Right. So here you want to think about things like, do we need to change our target audience? Do we need to remove a feature? Do we need to add a feature as against, oh, what's the font type of our website or the color of a button? No. Keep big picture or macro optimization, macro changes for the traction phase. However, when you get to transition phase, you start thinking about both. You start thinking about a mix of macro and micro. Here, you would make some big changes, but you also need to start focusing on the small changes. So when you get to transition phase, things like the button color of a city, right? Or the font type that you use, right? Those things will start to matter while you're also situating the big changes. So here's a mix of macro and micro changes, or rather improvements. But when you get to the growth phase, here one of the things you will focus on is micro changes, the small things that would matter, the small things that that can have large impact, right? So here focus on macro changes, big changes. Here a mix of both, and start introducing little changes. But here, what you start doing is, because your product is good, you've hitting product market fit, so it's just little things that you can always change every other week, every other month, that can improve your product experience for your users. So basically, these are the key things that differentiate the different stages of a startup, and these are the different things to focus on depending on the stage you are in. If you are in traction phase, you're just trying to build the momentum, focus heavily on customer retention and seeing how you can actually get a consistent stream of users as against a large number of users at once. Consistent stream of users. Focus on optimizing for retention and making big changes in our product or in our service or in our business model that can make large impact. When you are in transition phase, you begin to start identifying your key growth levers. What are those things in your product or in your marketing that actually are very significant to you hitting your North Star metric and your customers getting maximum value from interacting with your product? Those are your growth levers. Focus on identifying and optimizing those growth levers. Key metric would also again be retention, but retention in terms of your at knowing what your customer lifetime value is and your cost per customer acquisition, increasing customer lifetime value for each customer and reducing cost per acquisition for each customer, right? Those are the key metrics. And for optimization, you're making big changes, but you start paying attention also to the small changes that could potentially make impact, right? And when you hit growth, once you hit scalability, once you start growing real fast, maintain that growth. Make sure that you maintain that growth, right? Keep optimizing your growth levers. Just keep optimizing your growth levers. You begin to start focusing on customer acquisition a lot. You're not ignoring your retention metrics. You're not ignoring your LTV CAC ratio, but you're also focusing a lot on acquiring as much customers as you can, and you start thinking about your payback period. How much time more do we need to break even or to become profitable? And then this is where you would start doing a lot of micro changes, just little things that can make that impact about your product experience. I hope you've learned something significant about this video. If you're a startup owner, let me know your thoughts below. If you have any questions or you just want us to talk, please comment down below. If you also know a startup or entrepreneur, please share this video with them so that as much people as possible can actually watch it. Thank you for staying to the end of this video. My name is Itimi, and I'm passionate about growing people and